48 hours, do you think that's enough time to evaluate a household appliance worth several $1,000s? But that's exactly how Home Depot and Lowe's want you to believe it. That this is just a small policy change, a technical detail, it's no big deal. But if you look closer, you'll realize this isn't a small change, it's a shift in power. Previously, when buying a large item, you had time. Time to install, time to test, time to detect errors. And now, the clock starts counting down the moment you step out of the store. The strange thing is, Home Depot does that, Lowe's does the same, and even Walmart followed suit. 3 major companies simultaneously tightened a policy that was considered a safety net for consumers. And when large corporations behave identically, the question is no longer why they do so, but rather, who is truly being protected in this story. We will find the truth together in this video. Initially, everything seemed very normal. No noisy press releases. No warning emails were sent to loyal customers. It's just a small line of text, quietly appearing on the websites of Home Depot and Lowe's. But it was there that the rules of the game were rewritten. Both of America's largest retail chains tightened their return policies almost simultaneously, specifically targeting expensive and essential items for every household. Large appliances, generators, industrial paint sprayers, air conditioners, and dehumidifiers. These products aren't meant to be bought just for fun, but for long-term use and reliability. And then the number appeared. Not 30 days, not 14 days, but it's 48 hours, 2 days, shorter than a busy weekend, shorter than the time you wait for a technician to finish installing a washing machine. 48 hours to evaluate a product that could stay with you, or betray you, for years to come. And that's the point where anger begins to flare up. It's not just because the policy has become stricter, but because of how it's being implemented. Silently, simultaneously. Almost no one was warned in advance. For many customers, they only discovered this change when it was too late. What makes customers angry isn't just the loss of the right to return, but rather, it's the feeling of risk being deliberately pushed aside, while they are still promised quality and brand reputation. If the product is truly reliable, why rush to cut off the buyer's escape route? And more importantly, is this just a coincidence, or the first sign of a larger story unfolding behind the scenes of retail? In the next part, we'll dissect that question as the 3 giants not only change their policies, but also begin to behave identically. When Home Depot and Lowe's almost simultaneously shortened their return policies to 48 hours, the immediate question that popped into consumers' minds was, are they colluding? At first glance, the coincidence seemed like 2 clocks set to the same time, too perfect to be random. But if you take a step back and look through a business lens, the picture begins to become clearer. There's an arms race in retail between Home Depot and Lowe's, a silent arms race where the only loud sounds are the prices, promotions, and policies that serve as powerful tools. One side is reducing paint prices today, while the other is adjusting them tomorrow. If one party changes the terms, the other cannot stand still, because standing still means letting customers leave. And then, the picture expanded further as another name entered the frame: Walmart. Even before Home Depot and Lowe's, Walmart tightened its return policy for large appliances to 48 hours. This is like the first domino falling and the others being forced to follow to maintain balance. When the leader changes the rules of the game, the followers often don't have many options. This is not a secret conspiracy, but the spread of a policy detrimental to consumers, which is spreading like a virus through the retail ecosystem. No one wants to go first, but no one dares to do anything different either. However, the story doesn't end there, because when the 3 major companies simultaneously reduce their safety nets for customers, what's concerning isn't just the similarity in their actions, but the underlying motive. What made the entire industry simultaneously accept the risk of upsetting buyers? Before we delve into that question, if you find these behind-the-scenes analyses helpful, please consider subscribing to the channel, not to see more, but to better understand what's happening behind the brightly lit glass doors. In the next part, we'll delve into the true cost of returns, the staggering numbers, the silent turnaround of goods, and why they are reshaping the entire game. If the return policy is the tip of the iceberg, then beneath it lies a massive block of costs that most consumers never see. And it's that very iceberg that's dragging the entire retail industry down. According to industry-wide estimates, the total value of returned goods in the U.S. in 2024 will reach approximately $890 billion. This number is so large it's hard to imagine. For easy comparison, it's equivalent to over $1 billion worth of goods being turned back every day, generating no profit whatsoever, like a giant stream flowing backward, sweeping away the effort, time, and cost of the entire system. But the important thing is, returned goods are not only unsellable, it also leads to a series of hidden costs. Each product returned to the warehouse must be shipped back, inspected, sorted, and repackaged. Some items were scratched, damaged, or simply could no longer be sold as new, and when that happens, they become deeply discounted items. Clearance items, or worse, are completely eliminated. From the perspective of retailers, returns are like a leak in the hull of a ship. Each small hole won't sink the ship immediately, but thousands of small holes certainly will, and in the context of rising operating costs and increasingly thin profit margins. These leaks become more dangerous than ever. That's why Home Depot, Lowe's, and many other major chains are starting to change their perspective. Instead of viewing returns as a customer service, they gradually saw it as a financial risk that needed to be controlled. And the fastest way to control that risk is to shorten the return time. But here a paradox arises. Retailers hate returns, but customers need them to feel safe. For buyers, the return policy is not just a right, but an implicit commitment to quality. It's like a seatbelt. You hope you'll never need to use it, but you want it to be there. When the seatbelt is cut short, a sense of unease immediately arises. And the question is, does reducing returns really solve the problem? Or is it just a way to shift costs and risks onto consumers? In the next part, we will delve deeper into another dark corner, when return policies become a hidden message about product quality and trust begins to crack. In business, there are things that don't need flashy advertising or catchy slogans, yet they speak the truth more clearly than any promise. The return policy is one of them. It's like the small print at the end of a contract. Few people read it carefully, but it says everything. Let's put the two paintings side by side. One side is Costco, 90-day return policy for large appliances. In fact, in many cases, they are even more flexible than that. No noisy boasting, no flowery declarations, just a simple willingness to stand behind what they sell. On the other side are Home Depot and Lowe's. 48 hours, 2 short days for you to decide whether a complex machine is worth accompanying your family for many years. After those 48 hours, responsibility was shifted elsewhere, to the manufacturer, the warranty hotline, or a series of processes that few people wanted to navigate. If you truly believe in your product, you're not afraid of customers returning it. And conversely, when the outlet is narrowed, it unintentionally becomes a silent confession. For many regular customers, this touches a very deep memory. Back when you bought a washing machine and expected it to last 10 or 20 years, back when long warranties weren't a marketing gimmick, but the standard. At that time, the return policy was like a firm handshake. If anything goes wrong, we take responsibility. Today, that handshake has become loose. It's not because customers have changed, but because the product has changed. More complex, more components, and most importantly, less room for error. In that context, a short return policy is not only a cost-saving measure, but also a psychological barrier, lowering expectations from the outset. If you find these policy reading analyses helpful in understanding quality, please consider subscribing to the channel, not for the number of videos, but for the depth of each story. In the next part, we'll go even further as retailers begin to innovate in every way possible to avoid returns, and the line between protecting businesses and making it difficult for customers becomes more blurred than ever. When returns become a financial black hole, businesses don't sit idly by and wait to be sucked in. Instead, they created detours, subtle and quiet ways to avoid things, without making any public announcements. but enough to completely change the buyer's experience. Let's start with Amazon. In some cases, especially with low-priced products, Amazon chooses a seemingly generous approach, offering a refund and letting the customer keep the goods. It sounds like a gift, but in reality, it's a cold calculation. The cost of return shipping, inspection, packaging, and then reselling sometimes even exceeds the value of the item. So, Amazon cut their losses early, and the risk disappeared from their books. Next is Harbor Freight, a completely different approach. Instead of banning returns, they erected a psychological barrier. Restocking fees could be as high as 20% of the product's value. This number is large enough to make many people stop and think, do I really want to pay for this? This isn't a ban. It's about making the door heavier so fewer people want to push it. Then there's O'Reilly Auto Parts. Instead of resisting the buy-use-return behavior, they went straight to the heart of the matter. If the customer only needs the tool for a one-time car repair, why not rent it out to them? The tool returns to the store instead of returning to the warehouse for returns. A closed loop, fewer returns, less waste, and increased brand loyalty. 3 different approaches, but with the same goal: reduce returns by shifting risk away from the business. Not through harsh commands, but through experience design. When customers have to consider more and hesitate more, their behavior also changes accordingly. Retail is not naive at all. They didn't eliminate returns. They redefined them, so that the cost wasn't entirely on their side anymore. If it were you, would you be willing to accept these detours if it meant a lower price? Or do you want transparency, even if it means paying a little extra? In the next part, we will touch upon an even more sensitive issue: fraud, and why a very small group is causing the majority of honest customers to suffer the consequences. According to an industry-wide survey, 93% of retailers in the U.S. admit that fraudulent behavior and exploiting loopholes are a serious threat to their business operations. This number is almost absolute. It's like walking into a room with 100 people, and 93 of them nod in agreement, saying, "We're facing a major problem." And that issue is no longer theoretical. It appears very specific, very ordinary, and very creative. There are cases where small components are hidden inside a larger product. There are items that are purchased legally, taken out of the store, and then returned to the exchange counter a few days later, looking perfectly normal, but their actual value has evaporated somewhere along the way. The familiar model is buy, extract value, return the outer shell, a silent but costly cycle. From a business perspective, these are no longer isolated incidents. It's like small leaks in a dam. One spot is fine. Hundreds of scars, lasting for years. The consequences are inevitable. And when the pressure builds up long enough, the reaction is almost instinctive. Tighten policy, less time, less flexible, less default trust. But the problem lies here. The policy doesn't distinguish between who is fraudulent and who is an honest customer. The bitter truth is that the majority of customers who do the right thing have to pay the price because of the minority who do the wrong thing. That feeling is like being subjected to strict security checks just because someone else once abused the system. It's not because you're suspicious, but because the system is no longer capable of trusting. And here's the question I want you to think about. Does tightening returns really solve the root of the fraud problem? Or does it just make the experience colder for honest buyers? In the next part, we'll go one step further, as product quality declines and increasingly short policies begin to collide head-on, creating a downward spiral that leaves consumers with almost no options. If you're feeling like your household appliances are breaking down faster than before, it's not just your imagination, it's a real trend. With data, and it's happening on a large scale, let's look at the average lifespan of the most familiar items in every household. A microwave oven today typically only operates reliably for about 6 years. Dishwashers, refrigerators, things once considered long-term investments now average only 7 years, compared to a few decades ago, when many families used the same refrigerator for 20 to 30 years. This difference is like the anchor rope that once held the ship steady, now being half as thick. Why is that? The first reason lies in the material. To reduce costs and increase production speed, many devices today use lighter plastics, thinner alloys, and components optimized for the production line but not for long-term durability. The second reason is complexity. Modern devices are no longer simple mechanical machines. They're adding screens, circuit boards, sensors, wireless connectivity. Each new feature is like another link in the chain of failure risks, and when one link weakens, the entire system can come to a halt. But there's a deeper layer of causes, rarely stated directly. When a product lasts too long, consumers don't come back to buy a new one. And in a market where growth is a constant pressure, longevity sometimes becomes an issue. A product that survives for 30 years is a source of pride for engineers, but a headache for the sales department. It was in that context that Home Depot and Lowe's tightening of returns began to take on a different meaning. It's not just about cost control, but adapting to the reality that products today are more prone to malfunctions. And you? Are you willing to accept good enough items for a few years in exchange for a lower price? Or are you willing to pay more to regain the sense of security that once existed? If you find these analyses helpful in gaining a clearer understanding of the picture behind retail decisions, consider subscribing to the channel. No need to rush, just to stay with the story until the most important part. And in the next part, we'll touch on the most crucial concept of this entire story, when short lifespans are no longer a common occurrence, but become a strategy. At this point, if you still think that the rapid deterioration of goods is solely a consequence of cheaper materials or more complex technology, then we need to take a step back, because behind all of that is an old-fashioned but never outdated concept: planned obsolescence, or, in other words, pre-calculated obsolescence. Simply put, many products today are not designed for maximum durability. They are designed to be good enough for you to buy, enough to last for a few years, and enough for you to come back and buy a new one when the cycle ends. History has seen companies that made products too durable and paid the price for it. There are brands that were once proud of their products lasting a lifetime, only to disappear a few decades later because no one needed to buy more. The market, coldly, does not reward perfection. It rewards repeat purchases. In that context, planned obsolescence isn't always a secret button that makes products die on schedule. Sometimes, it's much more subtle. It's about choosing components with just enough lifespan. It's about making repairs more complicated instead of simpler. This is the rapid upgrading of new models to the point where the old models become obsolete in terms of experience, even though they still function. And this is where everything connects back to Home Depot and Lowe's. When a product is designed not to last too long, a short return policy is no longer incomprehensible. It's like retailers are adjusting the system to fit a reality that everyone knows, but few people say outright. And you? Would you accept living in a world where everything has an invisible expiration date? Has the time come for consumers to demand more, not just from the product, but from the entire system behind it? In the end, we'll return to the most practical question. In such a system, do consumers have any other choices? When peeled back far enough, the story of Home Depot and Lowe's is no longer simply about a return policy. It's a sign of a changing system. And in that system, consumers are forced to adjust their playing style. The first and most important step is to reevaluate where you place your trust, not just where you put your money. A price that's a few percentage points lower might be very appealing on the shelf, but if it comes with an early withdrawal policy, the real cost could come later. When the product malfunctions and you're left alone with the repair bill, instead of asking how much this item is discounted, perhaps it's time for buyers to ask different questions. Who will stand behind this product after 30 days? 60 days? A year? Is the after-sales process clear and easy to access? Or is it a maze of call centers and forms? The second is to prioritize policy over slogans. In a world where advertising is increasingly slick, return policies and warranties have become the most honest language. It doesn't tell you what you want to believe, but rather how protected you are. A long, flexible policy is like a large umbrella. You don't hope for rain, but when it comes, you'll know its value. Finally, consumers need to accept an unpleasant truth. The market will not naturally become kinder. Changes only happen when shopping behavior changes, as customers begin to abandon places that don't stand behind their products. Signals will be sent, slowly but clearly. So, what's your choice? How much are you willing to sacrifice for long-term peace of mind? And what's the line that makes you say, "No, this time I'll buy somewhere else"? And, in the final part, we'll conclude with a seemingly simple question that says it all: is consumer trust being eroded faster than return policies? Looking at the whole picture, what makes the story at Home Depot and Lowe's strange isn't just the shorter return policy. It lies in the simultaneous chain of decisions, in the way risk is silently transferred from the system to the consumer, and in a very familiar feeling, trust is being eroded day by day. But this isn't a story of just right or wrong. It's a story about a market under pressure, businesses trying to survive, and consumers forced to be more discerning than ever. Do you think this is a reasonable response from the retail industry? Or a sign that buyers are being pushed to the margins? Have you ever encountered a situation that made you lose faith in shopping? Please share your perspective in the comments section, as this is a discussion that no one should be left out of. If you enjoy videos that go behind the scenes, read between the lines, and ask questions that few dare to ask, consider subscribing to the channel, not to see more, but to understand better before each important decision. This video is made for analysis, providing public perspectives and information, and is not intended to attack or accuse any individual or business. The views in the video are for commentary and reference. Only the final decision is always yours. See you in the next video.